All right, more oil and gas news. Nigerian economist, entrepreneur, and founder of the ANAP Foundation, Atedo Petersa, has again questioned the decision to rehabilitate the Port Harcourt Refinery at a cost of $1.5 billion. In a tweet, he again mentioned the fact that the refinery had cost. Well, there it is. In 2019, PH Refinery contributed zero revenue, but incurred costs of $47 billion, almost $4 billion a month, instead of ending this nightmare through a BPE core investor sale, Bureau of Public Enterprises. The NNPC wants to enmesh Nigeria into a deeper financial mess by throwing $1.5 billion, including debt, at a problem it created. French oil giant Total has evacuated 1,000 of its employees from its liquefied natural gas project in northern Mozambique as insurgents attacked a town nearby. The fresh violence that follows attacks at the turn of the year suggests Mozambique's armed forces are struggling to regain control of the region surrounding the $20 billion project. Total, which bought a 26.5% stake in the LNG development for $3.9 billion in 2019, has said it wants security to be restored in the area before resuming onshore work with the aim of starting gas shipments in 2024. Joining us to discuss these oil and gas headlines is Mustapha Wahab, oil and gas analyst with Chapel Hill Denham. Mustapha, you're very welcome. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Rotus. It's good to be with you.
Fantastic. Lots to talk about. Let's start with Nigeria's 2030 gas ambitions. Very optimistic words there from the Secretary General of OPEC. What do you make of where Nigeria is trying to go by 2030, gas-powered economy?
I mean, I always know that Nigerian governments, they know the right things to do, right? Maybe perhaps because of, political willingness, they are not able to do some things. And this, Decade for Gas, program is probably one of those policies that I think they are policy in the right direction. And I think, there are a lot to unpack on this, right? From the business angle, what they are trying to do is to basically ensure that they are pushing a lot more money into CNG production, LNG, and LPG, and obviously gas to power, right? And that's essentially what I liked the most, the gas to power part. But beyond that, I think this sort of scheme to focus more on gas is more or less going to help Nigerian government basically solve this issue of, gas flaring that has been in existence in the last, couple of years, right? Environmentally, gas flaring is actually not very, very good, right? Because when you flare gas, you tend to, release carbon dioxide into the environment, which is clearly not a good thing. But beyond the environment, revenue-wise, I think in Chapel Hill, we estimated roughly around $800 million has been lost in revenues on a yearly basis from gas, flaring. So I think the impact of this sort of scheme would just basically help, harness that sort of massive amount of gas, opportunities that we have in Nigeria. And obviously, pandemic is also one of the key things that is basically driving this sort of move, right? In 2020, a year that is considered erratic, we saw significant deceleration in crude oil price, which basically affected, revenues for FGN. Now, when you diversify towards gas, what you're trying to do is to ensure that revenue is, being consistently generated. For gas, unlike oil, the gas price actually decoupled from oil price movements, that volatility in oil price. I think gas price basically benchmarked at around $2.7 per million standard cubic feet, right? So the impact of that is just basically going to ensure that if, we see something like pandemic again, FGN is basically going to get a lot more revenue from gas rather than, focusing strictly on oil.
Very in depth. Thank you very much for that. So you mentioned a lot there. I want to touch on, of course, LPG, CNG, the CNG part. Federal government has said that they plan to convert vehicles, petrol-powered vehicles, to CNG. I think the number is about 1 million vehicles. What do you make of those plans? Can that be achieved reasonable amount of time?
Again, I think FGN can be too optimistic when it comes to putting policies out there, right? Saying that you want to convert 1 million vehicle, I think is more or less a pipe dream as far as I am concerned. But if it's something that you want to do gradually, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't know. For me personally, I think that is quite ambitious, and I think that they would have to slow things down to basically harness this sort of nice policy initiative that they are trying to put out there.
And there's also the cost as well. All right, you mentioned power. Last week, I think it was on Friday, cover story on This Day newspaper. The Nigerian government is considering unbundling the transmission company of Nigeria, the TCN. What role does the appropriate pricing of gas play in, I guess, the power ambitions of the country going forward?
I mean, there's a lot of issues right there, right? I mean, since we started this issue of commercializing the power sector, we've not seen any significant improvement as far as power generation and transmission is concerned for Nigeria. I think currently Nigeria ranks poorly in terms of installed capacity for power generation. I think roughly we have around 14,000 megawatts installed capacity when compared to the size of Nigeria's economy and obviously, comparable, countries that we have in the country. So for me, I think issues around the ability of the citizens of Nigeria to be able to pay cost-reflective electricity price is going to be a significant issue when it comes to, benchmarking gas price for power generation, right? So I think that, perhaps maybe at some point they would have to find a way to build, naira pricing into that sort of template, such that when you witness, massive amount of naira movement, you won't see the impact on prices that final consumers will pay. And for TCN, I think it's about time, right? Earlier I said Nigeria has a stock capacity of 14,000 megawatts, right? Out of that 14,000, only about 7.5 is only able to generate electricity because of the aging plants that they have in those sort of environments, right? But beyond that, we are only able to transmit roughly half of that, which basically means that there is still amount of investment that is needed to ensure that things move as swiftly in that sort of value chain. So before you get to the distribution part, there's still a lot of issues at that transmission part. So if FGN, come out to say they want to unbundle it, I think it's going to be a massive, wonderful idea for private investors to come in to put a lot of monies in that value chain to ensure that things move swiftly.
Great stuff, great stuff. Let's move to the tweet from Atedo Peter's side. Again, this is, I think, his second or third tweet now where he's questioned. He even had an exclusive interview on Newsnight on Arise News last week where he talked about this. What do you make of what's been going on with respect to, there's his tweet there. What do you make of what's been going on with, I guess, this price tag of $1.5 billion to rehabilitate the Port Harcourt refinery?
Personally, reviving the refinery for me, I don't think is more of a pipe dream for Nigerian government because we've seen older plants. Port Harcourt refinery is only 40-year-old. We've seen older plants running at full capacity globally, right? But I think the key concern is that, I've seen them list the sources of funding for that $1.5 billion. But the key question is, what is going to be the investment case for this sort of project, especially when Dangote refinery is going to be ready by 2022. Are they going to be competing with Dangote, right? Again, but beyond that, I still wonder why today Nigerian government is still talking about rehabilitating refinery, where a significant portion of the world are already moving towards greener, and cleaner energy. In Norway, for instance, what they stated clearly is that by 2025, remember Norway is one of those countries that rely heavily on revenues from oil exports, right? And what they stated clearly is that they want to discontinue any sale of fossil fuel-powered cars, by 2025, right? But beyond Norway, 9 other countries have also made it clear that they want to discontinue any internal combustion engine in their countries. So, the key question is, if we get this refinery back to life, how long is it going to last for before we now start to see the question of people talking about moving to greener energy? You mentioned clearly right now that Nigeria is trying to move towards CNG yes. Engine for cars in Nigeria. So I think that refinery in Nigeria is more or less another white elephant project that they need to focus more on other projects that have solid investment case than refinery.
All right, lastly, I think we've got a couple minutes to go. Very quickly, the terrorist attack in Mozambique, what it's done to Total's plans for the $20 billion liquefied natural gas project they have there. Is there a wider issue with this, impeding foreign direct investment from coming into Africa with issues like this?
Absolutely. If it were to be Niger Delta, where you clearly understand the demand of the militants, it would have been easier for you to solve that kind of problem. But for these guys, nobody really knows what they want, right? And Mozambique in the last couple of years has been one of those massive destinations of investment as far as oil and gas, cash is concerned. I think Eni, for instance, has LNG projects of up to the tune of 10 million metric tons capacity. Total, ExxonMobil is also closing to completing their FIDs another LNG train, right? So the impact of this terrorism is just basically going to slow down that sort of massive wave of investment that we've seen in Mozambique in recent times. So I think that I don't know who to appeal to. Perhaps FGI, the government should probably, try to understand what the demand of this. Because what I hear is that they are now government military is now losing, control of those territories. So I think that it just basically makes sense for you to find a way to resolve this issue and then move on.
Mustapha Wahab, oil and gas analyst with Chapel Hill Denham. Thank you so much for joining us.